Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we're doing something a little out of the norm, a little unconventional. That doesn't mean we haven't done it before, but normally we do reactionary commentary here on news articles, politics, culture, stuff like that. But today, we're challenging our belief systems on free speech, democracies, and republics. I've been sitting on this for 2 months. I've seen it multiple times. But it has pushed me to really think about where we are at as a country, where we're at in our value systems, our freedoms, our creed, where we're at with 35 to 40 million people that are here illegally that have a chance to receive amnesty at some point in the future here, which is going to change our value system, our culture, our creed, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. But if you're somebody that is free speech like me, if you're somebody that loves our Constitution, loves the Declaration of Independence, loves democracies, loves a republic, this is going to challenge your belief system here. I don't have an answer still to this day, but this is Eric Weinstein on the right, Dave Rubin on the left. Dave Rubin was once a self-professed leftist, worked for the Young Turks, and is now, I think, some more of a moderate / maybe a conservative, where Eric Weinstein on the right is a liberal. He's part of the left. He's a self-proclaimed leftist, so it's not just me saying that. I listen to him a lot. He's way smarter than I will ever be, very intellectual, but I think it's important, you guys, to listen to people on the other side, which I've said time and time again. As much as I hound Democrats and progressives and the leftists, they're not all insane. Eric Weinstein is not insane. This man is going to push you. But I want you to listen to this because, like I said, he brings up a very great point. And as somebody that is a free speech advocate, in a way, he's basically saying we have to limit free speech. We have to limit the things that are going on in our country. And hopefully I'm getting that right. But let's check this out. Let's roll it.
We had dinner last night. You're, I would say, on it when it comes to the state of the world right now. And your concerns are the things that I think everyone is concerned about right now. I hand you that.
Really appreciate it. Don't know what to do exactly. You know, one of the things that came out of the discussion last night is that I don't think we are where we think we are. I give the analogy that if you have a river that has always been flowing in 1 year, you have unseasonably cold temperatures, it freezes over. People think they can do what they've always done. They can dive off the rock into the river, and if they're going to hit ice 1 year, and they realize that you have to change your behavior when there's a phase change. I think that many of the recourses that we've thought about, free markets, free speech, democracy, have to be rethought if they become gamed. And I think one of the things that we're experiencing is we don't know whether to roll back to a previous version of ourselves, which would be like trying to find safe mode on a computer where the operating system has become corrupted, or whether we need to go forward for things that aren't capitalism or communism, aren't democracy, because in fact there's been a phase change in our world. And I think what we're doing is avoiding the question of, you know, for example, if Hamas is a democratically elected government and it engages in pure terror, is democracy what we think it is? Does free speech operate the same way if you have armies of bots that can confuse people into thinking that there's a mass of people who believe something, which there isn't on day one, but by virtue of the power of persuasion and social coercion, people are afraid to hold simple, decent perspectives because every time they do it, they're torn apart by what seems to be 10,000 accounts telling them that they're an idiot, that they're cringeworthy, that they're over, that they're barbarous. And I watched this happen to you. You were one of the...
You've seen my Twitter account, my God.
Well, that's the thing, right? And I saw the repetition through what psychologists would call perseveration, where they would just hit you with the same phrases over and over again, and it causes people to move away from you because we have evolutionary programming. So I think one of the things that I believe is that if I think about the early work you and I did together, we were talking about fake news and what was coming. It was pretty prophetic, though that stuff held up pretty well.
You're on the short list of people that I would say that interviews actually do stand up, and we're ballpark
right back at you.
Or let's say directionally right about where this was going to go.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we're sort of in the prequel version of Star Wars now when Yoda says, Well, failed we have. That seems like in some respects.
Well, and somebody tried to execute Order 66, and so the Jedi, were put under a lot of pressure. But one of the things that I really appreciate is the number of people who've had their relationships strained by the relentless attack we've all been under. You used to be a liberal and a lefty. I'm still in that position. And the fact is that we're still talking.
We're still here, man.
Well, and a large number of us never stop talking to each other.
I just want to highlight that point right there, is that you have people with differing viewpoints, and sometimes drastically different viewpoints, are still able to hold a conversation. And it's that dialogue that can never be stopped that we need to have in this country, because the hope is through dialogue, through conversations, basically through exploring and trying to find out what is true, that we can find thus what is true or what is the best option. So even though Eric Weinstein is a self-proclaimed leftist, I still even listen to him because he challenges my viewpoints. Just because I'm somebody conservative Republican does not mean I'm right. I'm probably a lot of times wrong when I do my reactionary commentary of things I say on the show. And the hope is that we can sit back and reflect, which for those that have been longtime listeners for the last 3 years of the Ball Brad Show, you know that is one of the mechanisms as to why I did this, was to be able to go back on prior recordings that I did and see how my viewpoint has changed. Was I right? Was I wrong? Why did I say that stupid statement? Why did I do this or do that? And use it as a self-correction mode for me. But right now is he's really challenging of, if you have people that are utilizing that freedom of speech, whether it's bots or not, to get a viewpoint out there, then if you don't want those bots to be able to utilize somebody else's freedom of speech that's getting a message out from them, whether it's really them or not, but they're utilizing a bot to get it out there, aren't we limiting free speech then for those people? And what if it's free speech that we don't like, but that free speech is mobilizing a value system that is gaining traction that ultimately is going to destroy this country from the inside out? Does that make sense? I mean, you have 35 to 40 million people here illegally in this country. If you were to give all of them amnesty, which, by the way, is going to come, whether you like it or not, it is going to happen. If you have some sort of fictitious thing going on in your mind to where you're going to deport 35 or 40 million people, even Ball Bradshaw subscribers, you guys got to wake up. That ain't going to happen. I want it to. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I want it to as well, but it ain't going to happen. So you're going to have a lot of people that came here illegally, that didn't want to take the necessary steps, did not actually sit there and sign on the paper that they're going to follow our creed, our value system, our democracy, our republic, everything that encompasses the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution. They might disagree with it. What are you going to do then when your entire culture changes in less than a decade? Do we revert back to our prior self, like Eric Weinstein's portraying right now? Or do we move forward with something different? I don't have the answers, by the way. Trust me, I've been meditating on this sucker for 2 months, and I've seen it over and over again.
But some people have stopped talking to us. But one of the things that I think is really impressive is the extent to which we have held together. And even if I disagree with some of the positions you've now adopted, whatever, the same rules go. Yeah. So what I was going to say is, if we want to do the same thing we were doing all those years ago, we have to figure out what are the edgy things nobody's prepared to think that unfortunately are going to be prophetic. And I think one of them is going to be that you can't simply keep invoking democracy, the free movement of people, diversity is our strength, et cetera, because it's going into a place that's going to be anything but tolerant. We're going to have to learn, for example, that we must be intolerant of intolerance to be tolerant. It's like multiplying -1 times -1 to get a positive number. And I think people are afraid that they're going to have to turn against things that have always been true. But like that winter where suddenly things are colder than usual, the river stops flowing the way it always has, and you have to watch it.
So in the interest of time, and we'll pick this up back when we're in the city, anytime you can come to the free state of Florida. But so at dinner last night, we had a great table of people from James Lindsay and Douglas Murray and Melissa Chen and all the people, Gozi and the usual suspects. Coleman Hughes. This was the whole crew of people trying to work through all this. What we were whittling it down to last night is exactly what you just talked about there, the paradox of tolerance and what Western societies are going to have to do in the face of now what I guess you would call political or cultural movements that are using our freedoms against us. So in relation to what we saw here just a day or two before you and I arrived in London, this 200,000 person sized protest with Al-Qaeda flags and Hamas flags and River to the Sea chants and everything else, what does a Western society do related to speech, understanding that
You're going to have
Western
to,
Europe has different laws related to speech than we do.
You're going to have to consider things that you've never considered, because what we're doing is we're normalizing the precursors of genocide. These are the precursors of genocide, make no mistake. Your friendly college students with blue hair chanting "from the river to the sea" are talking about the deaths of millions of people. And what's more, the people chanting this are going to get exactly what they oppose. They're going to get farther and farther. They are electing the right-wing government in Israel that I don't want. You may support them, but I don't want that right-wing government in Israel. They want to pull their children from the rubble because the videos are that powerful. By normalizing the concept of martyrdom, what you're seeing is what I've called IDF-assisted suicide, which is how do we get the IDF to attack our cities, our population centers? You know, if we can just, for example, put our military installations proximate to a hospital or a school, we can put the IDF in what I've said is Zugzwang, which is a term borrowed from chess for when every move your opponent gives you leaves you worse off. And if Israel does not extricate itself from the dance of death with a non-traditional foe, it's going to find that its soul will be destroyed. And I want to be very clear about this. We're used to the idea of nations warring over things like mineral rights and shipping lanes and territory. This is not that. This is a non-traditional foe which is saying, we are going to fight you in ways that you don't want. We want you to hurt us as badly as possible because we're after your soul as well as the land.
Right. And we're going to do everything imaginable and unimaginable to you in the process.
Sure.
Right. So we're going to, there will be no rules in terms of what we will do to you. And we will also rip up the rules in how you can possibly
respond. We will cause your children.
If you guys are catching on to this, this is so deep in conversation. It's head spinning. I mean, the amount of ways you can spread out and have more conversation just about what's being stated is really wild. I mean, going back to him talking about from the river to the sea, right? The extermination of Jews that's being chanted on our college campuses. That's basically now indoctrination factories for the leftist ideology. But the left don't believe in the values and creed that this country stands on. They think this country's racist. They think this country is a bunch of patriarchy that was established from its founding and whatever it may be that these leftists push, not just from K through 12th, but also in the higher education systems, critical race theory that comes from critical law studies, all sorts of stuff, this spider webs. But what they're doing is they're weaponizing freedom of speech to ultimately propose viewpoints that are anti-American, anti-democracy, anti-Republican, or anti-Republic. And it really formulates into, you are growing people here with an ideology, or says that people are growing up with an ideology here that counters what we're doing as a country, or what our country has been doing for hundreds of years at this point. I'm not saying everything we've done is perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to decide, do we want to revert back to our old self, or do we want to establish something new? And the left is trying to establish something new that is not good. And that's what's being proposed here is, what do we do then with that freedom of speech? Do we allow it to continue to happen? Because remember, if you start chiseling away at somebody else's freedom of speech because you don't like it, and because you're indoctrinating people, you're basically brainwashing them in our education system all the way through college, and that has a impact on your country moving forward, you know, that can come around back to you as well. So that's why, again, I'm like at a crossroads here. I don't know which direction to go, because I see what the left is doing to our country. I see how it's destroying it from the inside out, which is why I wrote an entire book. I wrote an entire book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. If you haven't picked up yourself a copy, we kind of grapple again in indoctrination. I think there's even a chapter on it. We talk about the education system, critical race theory, where it came from, what are the ramifications of it. You know, this kind of, again, is going to challenge your viewpoint on our Constitution. I think our Constitution is great, but you know, when people weaponize it, it can hurt you.
To come home from college supportive of barbarism and atrocities beyond the pale. And it's time to release more video on mainstream channels to show what people are supporting. How many people have the guts to watch a resistance fighter take a shovel and attempt to sever the head of a corpse What is it like what is it like to shoot into a porta potty? Or at least, please show me the brave resistance fighter shooting directly at the tire of an ambulance. I mean, nobody's getting killed. There's nothing graphic about it, but you know what it is. It's like trying to say, we want to make sure that you can't get your injured to a place where they can be healed. What we're talking about isn't, and mark my words, you're talking about a non-traditional foe, and all of your intuition is how to fight a traditional foe. And it's time to recognize that Western society has been gamed. And if you do not decorrupt and de-game what has happened, and you keep saying we want democracy, we want freedom of movement, etc., diversity is our strength, you're talking about killing many people. And by the way, this starts with the Jews, and it's not ending there.
Yeah, well,
100% correct. And the left does not realize this. That's why you need to have more conversation. And what Eric Weinstein is saying is you need to show video of what somebody's ideology can lead to. And we live in such a sheltered world here in the United States. I've always said it is mind-blowing, it's head-spinning. When Ben Shapiro was showing footage of Hamas trying to behead people, stomping on dead soldiers' faces, mowing people down in the streets, blowing people up, when, heck, the Taliban was beheading people in the early 2000s, I've always said, show the American people the atrocities of what these evil people are doing. Because we live so sheltered, nobody sees this stuff. You show a high-speed chase on TV, and you have these reporters going, this is going to be graphic content. If you don't want to see it, viewer discretion's advised. It's so sheltered. These people think that nothing terrible is going to go on in the world. They don't understand. I'm not hounding Americans. I'm not saying Americans are dumb. I'm saying people are ignorant to what is going on around the world. Babies being thrown in the fire pits alive and then being pulled out, and women being made to eat their child that was just alive and barbecued. People think I make these stories up. I don't. It's going on right now. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Woman gives birth to baby, baby thrown into fire, baby burned to crisp. Mom that just gave birth to said baby has to eat it in front of everybody and then is gang raped by a bunch of terrorists. And my videos get removed off YouTube for saying what is happening in the world that is terrible and evil. But don't worry, you guys. Diversity of opinions. Diversity. We need those people that just threw a baby into a fire and made a mother eat it. We need to make sure we listen to their viewpoint. Matter of fact, we should actually teach their ideology in our education system so that we can destroy this country from the inside out. People think I'm joking when I say stuff like that. What do you think these people are chanting river to the sea for? These are the same people that will not condemn Hamas. They will not condemn certain terrorist organizations. It doesn't stop with the Jews, you guys. You have to realize that. And I'm not just talking about extermination of a people. I'm talking about extermination of an ideology as well. And that ideology is Western civilization. The greatest freaking country God has ever created. This is not a joke. And that's why I wanted to dedicate an entire episode on this, because it really challenges my viewpoint. What do we do with people that have destructive ideology, and it's so destructive, and they're so ignorant on how the ramifications of their ideology can unfold into something catastrophic? What do we do with those people? I don't have an answer. The easy American answer for the Constitution, you don't do anything. You let them be idiots. But the sad thing is that a lot of people are really taking hold of this dangerous ideology to where it's manifesting in a way that's grabbing hold of a mass amount of people. And now you're starting to carve out what we hold to be so dear. And that is our freedoms. That's our liberties, our pursuit of happiness. And there's people who don't agree with it here.
Well, that's one of the lines that I think from October 9th, the first Monday after this, that I immediately said, I think this is about the Jews. You think when they're done with the Jews there, they're going to go like this.
Well, but also,
boy, I want to get this back to the free speech part, because without getting too lost in the geopolitics and the nature of the fight. What do you? So we're here in London. There are quite literally hundreds of thousands, if not more, people in this country that seemingly support this. How do you, as a Western nation, defend free speech and defend the right to protest and all that stuff without self-immolating? Which seems like it might be happening.
Maybe you're misunderstanding. That's what the people who are the hardest line from that side have figured out.
No, I know.
They have figured out you are going to be slow to realize that free speech will kill you.
Well, this was the nature of our conversation last night when it got pretty hot. Because
it's the most difficult conversation. And look, If you and I have any basis to our relationship, is that we get there early before anybody's willing to talk about these things. Like we would have come across as conspiracy theorists before the Twitter files came out, before we knew that the GEC or CISA inside the Department of Homeland Security was actually coordinating social media, what could and couldn't be said. What we are going to have to realize is that our most sacred tenets have been weaponized against us. And if we do not put the brain power into de-weaponizing and realizing that we are in what I've called the no-name revolution, right? Years ago, 2017, I was saying that on stage at the Masonic. This thing is going to spread worldwide. The chain of transmission from the Gaza Strip to Iran to distracting the U.S. with its, 11 active carrier groups. And then China says, how many of those groups have to be engaged in regional skirmishes before the Taiwan Strait becomes more interesting? Mm-hmm. I think
what he's saying right there, if you didn't catch on, is that basically we're being, I don't want to say manipulated, but we're basically being shown a camel, but we're kind of focusing on all these gnats that are around when there's a camel standing right in front of us. So we're focusing on, Iran, we're focusing on Ukraine and Russia, we're focusing on Yemen, we're focusing on Syria, we're focusing on all these gnats, but there's a camel standing right in front of us. And Eric Weinstein is basically saying, hey, at what point is the United States going to be spread so thin to where the Taiwan Strait, China invading Taiwan and taking it over, is actually feasible? And you really got to be far out there if you don't think that calculation's already been made. With what China's actually done, we've seen leaked footage, we've seen leaked audio, we've covered here on the Bald Brad Show, of them already having a game plan of how they're going to invade Taiwan, what provinces in China are the most risky, what provinces do they need to protect the most if the United States were to attack them because of supply chain issues for their military equipment to run through. All this has been covered here on the show years ago. He's making a fabulous point here, and hopefully, again, it's challenging your viewpoint on what's really going on here in the United States. Again, the answer of how to solve it, I don't have it yet.
I think what we're not understanding is the post-World War II era defined a bubble that will never exist again in human history, and that we've spent our entire lives in an anomalous period thinking that it's normal.
So when a lot of people now see our kind of geriatric and 80-plus-year-old
makes no
leaders,
sense.
That basically gets to the thesis of your point, right? Like, we've had a set of leaders, and I don't mean it purely on the age level, but our intellectual class has been running around defending something that in some ways didn't exist anymore, whether it was economically or related to free speech or anything else. Sure.
So we just lost Dianne Feinstein, but the fact is that our leaders now are basically have been born in the 40s, maybe the late 30s. And a lot of these people, they spent their entire life in the shadow of the generation that knew the horrors of the early 20th century. Mm-hmm. And they're not the adults. They're peacetime adults for a peacetime that was only possible because of the anomalous nature of World War II and the intellectual power of atomic weaponry, which caused everyone to realize how serious life was. I can tell you that because I've been talking about the need to explode a rare nuclear device above ground because people have forgotten their fear. They thought that the Cold War consigned nuclear weapons to be an archaic concern. Nobody's thinking that anymore, right? Things need to be so concrete for people to shake them out of their stupor that it's almost beyond belief.
So is that the bizarre?
I 100% agree with that. And that's why you guys hear me use terms like head spinning, wild, because it's so beyond belief. I actually don't have words to describe how wild or insane some of the stuff is. Of course, we talk mostly in terms of what the leftist ideology is pushing or these woke libs, stuff like that. But when it comes to the atrocities of an ideology and how destructive they are and how much that's going over people's heads or they don't care because it's not impacting them yet, where it's like you almost need to launch a nuclear warhead above ground to wake people up to the devastation that can be caused by some sort of destructive ideology or some sort of physical actual weaponry.
And I hate to use the term, but it's come up a couple times the last couple of days. Is that the bizarre silver lining to this moment, that the barbarity and the live stream nature of this?
We haven't seen it.
Everything. No, well, we've seen it to a degree. We have certainly not seen it all.
No. We haven't seen it, Dave.
How do you mean?
I've seen things and you have seen things on Telegram channels where you have to work really hard because the Google search engine seems to hide things from us. There is some desire to normalize things. When there's a concepts like strategic silence, where you don't report the news as a news organization because you're worried about what the social effect of it is.
Remember when we did the 4 types of fake news on the show years ago?
Sure.
You said one of the type, the most nefarious type, I quoted you in my book, was the stuff that they won't cover. The stuff that they cover and lie about, we have a little something to work with.
Right. But when somebody says, the mass killer shouted a religious slogan in a foreign language, no motive is known. It's time to end this once and for all. And what we're doing is we're playing with ultimate fire. We have to worry about Russia, who in some sense we may have wronged, but they are still butchers and very, very dangerous. China has been playing the long game. I have the ultimate respect for how disciplined they've been, but we have to realize what they really present. India, Pakistan remains incredibly potent. Iran and Israel are poised for something, and people have to realize you've never seen a hydrogen bomb used in anger. The first time it happens will be like 9/11 raised to the 1,000th power.
Southern border is open. Known terrorists and unknown terrorists are here right now. You guys go, what do you mean known terrorists? DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas did not know where a bunch of terrorists were. Not only did he tell Congress that, because Jim Jordan asked him, he also said it again on Brett Breyer's show, because Brett Breyer asked him the next day, he's like, hey, during Congress with Jim Jordan, you said you didn't really know where these terrorists are. Do you know where they are now? He gave a loosey-goosey answer. Known terrorists. Can you imagine how many are unknown that are in this country present time? Create a dirty bomb, poison your water supply, launch some sort of dirty bomb in the air that will throw out your electric grid for a long time. I don't think people realize how unsafe we actually are in this country. For China to wipe out the entire United States, they just need to launch a nuclear warhead above our airspace to throw an EMP bomb out. Or in other words, just wipe out our entire electric grid. You're going to see devastation that you've never seen in the history of mankind. Let me tell you that. You thought Hiroshima and Nagasaki was bad? Nuh-uh. Do a little bit of Googling search on that bad boy of what's going to happen when Americans lose their electric grid and how long you're going to survive. And it ain't going to be long. He's right.
This was an anomaly, and we squandered the last bit of this. We were supposed to use the post-World War II peace to figure out how to stabilize this place. Mm-hmm. And we failed. We talked about peace dividends. We worried more about getting swimming pools and luxury automobiles.
Is that just the nature of human reality? You go through these hard times, you build good things, the good people become weak, and
there's this fourth turning thing, and the problem is I have a different version of it, which is hard times make strong men make nuclear weapons in good times make weak men and nuclear weapons make end times. And people have to stop this.
He is not wrong on that. I 100% agree with that. You guys, you need to understand, this is somebody of the left. For me, he is speaking logic. He doesn't sound like an insane woke lefty. And that's what one of the reasons why I want to show this as well. First is because it's challenging my belief system, right? Which is what we need. We do that as people of faith all the time. We're always challenging our belief system, unlike the woke left or these atheists, right? Those are the most religious people. They don't ever challenge their belief system. As a conservative Republican, I seek out people to challenge my belief system. Eric Weinstein, or Weinstein, however you want to phrase it, look, he's somebody that you guys should reach and listen to quite often because he will challenge you. A lot of people are into the long form podcast or more of an intellectual style of podcast. I very much am. This is right up my alley, but he's not wrong in terms of when times are good, times are peace, you create weak men. Look around. Look at the alphabet soup community and how much it's expanded, or the trans community has been exponential of people being weak, men putting on makeup and getting surgeries and all this flamboyant stuff. You know what I mean? And that's why women are having trouble seeking out actual men. And that's why even you have these woke libs that were for a while going, oh, I want a man that's not as masculine, that, really identifies and portrays his feelings and knows all this stuff. Now they're even coming out on TikTok years later going, yeah, I was wrong. The type of man that I want is conservative, is Republican, is a Christian. Why? Because they're in such high demand. Why? Because nobody can find them out there because they're so far and few between because so many men are not masculine anymore.
It's fourth turning nonsense.
Okay, so just again, we'll do this.
I'm talking as fast as I can.
You'll come to Miami. We'll do a proper one, or we'll do it on Skype in the meantime. But I just want to. I'm really trying to nail down. I'm trying to nail down the speech component of this.
Tell me.
So when you tell me that the river to the sea is a genocidal chant.
Yep.
In Florida, DeSantis has passed laws. We banned some of these protests because he's talking about material support.
And he makes us uncomfortable by banning speech.
However,
Correct.
well, it's material support, but yes, people are arguing that he's banning speech.
My point is that he's recognized
This is where
the phase transition.
right. So how do we encourage that while being respectful of the ideas and ideals that we care about? How do we make sure that we have the proper tools, which is what he's done, to export to the rest of the country and maybe the world?
It has to do with the fact that you need an interpretation of the world that allows you not to have a suicide pact. Democracy is not a suicide pact. Free speech is not a suicide pact. Tolerance is not a suicide pact. Immigration is not a suicide pact. When you start to realize that someone has gamed your culture, there are times when you have to uninvite a dinner guest. And the fact of the matter is we're being given a choice. And the choice is, do you wish to have a naive relationship to your ideas and the gamers come in from outside and weaponize these things against you? Or do you actually realize that you're being called upon to say, what is the soul and intent of free speech, the soul and intent of democracy? And so you're being given a choice between the letter and the intent. For example, if you take the First Amendment of the Constitution, it says Congress may make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Somebody says, well, jihad is part of my religion. I am entitled by the First Amendment to practice it, and I will do it with your children. No, you won't. And the reason is that we have a Supreme Court that acts as the oral Torah to the written Torah that is the Constitution. And so the Supreme Court is going to be active, and it's going to have to figure out how to get the letter of the decision law, the case law, to match the spirit and intent of the Constitution. It's going to be incredibly unpleasant, but it's a matter of survival. And the Constitution will mean nothing if we don't survive. And we have to realize that we are now facing existential threats because of incredible simplicity. If we have committed one crime during this period, it is we have pushed out the idea that you can understand freedom through simplicities. I believe in free speech. I believe in open borders. I believe in democracy. I believe in one man, one vote. Oh, really? Does Wyoming, which has 2 senators and no people, have the same power in the Senate as California, which has a tremendous number of people and 2 senators? No, there's no one man, one vote. People are going to have to wake up to the idea that they've been fed childlike aphorisms that do not actually work for the very difficult times we're in. And what I would say is, let's not wait to become those strong people. Let's not be weak people. Let's realize that we do suspend certain kinds of liberty. You're not exactly free to use free speech if you're privy to something about the invasion of the beaches of Normandy, to just go on social media and say, hey, huge troop buildup. If that were happening today, we would have to restrict. So the idea is we need to let people in on how a mature society actually handled these things over time.
It is the easiest way for people.
So again, what he's talking about is limiting people's freedom of speech. And that's why Dave Rubin brought up what Ron DeSantis in a way is doing in Florida. And Eric Weinstein agreed with what Ron DeSantis is doing and even said, hey, you got to be intolerant to ultimately move forward with the tolerance. And when people are pushing ideology and a narrative out there, utilizing their freedom of speech that is crippling, that is harmful to the ideology and the creed of one's nation, like ours here, then, like Eric Weinstein is saying, you need to limit that speech. But here's the problem. What do we do then if it's gone too far already, where you have so many people in this country right now that don't necessarily believe in what our value system is, doesn't believe in our democracy, doesn't believe in our republic, doesn't believe in all the things that were created from the inception of this country that is a good thing, city, the shining city on the hill that we have here, the greatest country God's ever created. If you have people that aren't buying into that anymore, or buying into the American dream, or whatever it may be, and they get elected in the positions of power, can't that be then thus used as a weapon against us Americans that wanted to keep this country great, wanted to hold on to the value system that we have here, like freedom of speech or Second Amendment, whatever it may be, Judeo-Christian values, stuff like that. That doesn't mean you can't be of a different faith and be in this country and practice your faith. That's not what I'm saying. So please don't misconstrue that, people on the left. But again, he's challenging my viewpoint here because it can be used as a weapon as well against us when you get somebody else that's elected on the other side of the aisle that is a whack job, like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, like these crazy people. I mean, Adam Schiff, I've heard, is just evil. Like, you look into that man's eyes, I've heard people see the devil. Like, out of anybody that's in America, even if you want to like throw shade at Joe Biden, which we do here all the time on the Bald Brad Show, like Adam Schiff is possibly the most evil person in our government at present time. But here nor there, what do you do when a guy like that is able to be elected, which he is? You give that guy power. Jerry Nadler's another one, little psycho. That's what I mean, is like, I'm at a crossroads here. I don't have an answer for all of you. You know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of you will be throwing in the comment section of the live chat, well, no, I mean, freedom of speech is freedom of speech. And it's said there, or no, we need to limit people. You're going to give differing viewpoints. That's why I wanted to do this. This is creating discussion here, hopefully on our channel, and pushing us to all seek out as a community. What do we do right now? Because we've never faced this. You got these geriatrics in government that are at top levels. The guy running the show right now, the show running it, that's Joe Biden, air quotes, because we don't know who he is, because he's a puppet that's being ultimately masqueraded around as the president when somebody else is running the show. Obama, the Clintons, the deep state, hell, I don't know, maybe some foreign adversary for all I know. But I don't know. I don't have an answer. And like I said, I've been meditating on this for 2 months, man. 2 months.
That are maybe not clear about all this.
Sure.
See how for years, guys like us were going to college campuses and being called Nazis and had to have security and been protested and microaggressions and all the rest of it. And then the second this thing happens with Israel, suddenly universities are defending the call to genocide. Like, to me, that's like a very good example of how we can show people, boy, this was only about controlling you. It had nothing.
Well, look, but there were also issues where people are confused because Israel has chosen to do things that are really not comfortable and maybe not right. No nation has ever only behaved ethically. Israel's no exception.
I don't know that any Asian nation has behaved more ethically in this.
Well,
but I get your meta point.
And so my point is that there's two basic ways to do this. There's the conservative way, which is you say something simple like, no nation has behaved more ethically given the difficult situation that Israel has always been in at an existential level. So that makes good sense to me. Then there's the liberal way of doing it, which is that you have a paragraph that goes on for, 12 pages with lots of footnotes and pointers and references and hyperlinks.
It's a slow delay of the beheading, because you have to read a lot.
Right. Like, I'm not saying this and I'm not saying that. So I'm in the camp that does that thing.
Right.
And then the conservatives basically say, we don't have time for this. Here's the simple thing. It's not quite true, but it's true enough. It's like, it's not true that there are only two.
I don't know if I fully believe that, because I'm a registered Republican, but I'm a conservative. I like the idea of what Eric Weinstein is talking about, of expanding our viewpoints, because a lot of things are nuanced. At the end of the day, they really are. Do I pick like anti-illegal immigration? Absolutely. But if I were to expand on that, like Eric Weinstein is saying here, then do I think there's people that came here illegally that really do believe in our value system, our creed, that are like super pro-American? Absolutely. And if we were able to give that person a pathway to citizenship, whether that's having them join up in our military, sending them overseas, something like that, they already been here for like a decade and they've created a business, they have employees, whatever it may be, if I'm making sense here, then I could understand about giving that person amnesty. So I don't think Eric Weinstein's being fair, and I think this is more of his left side ideology coming out at the end of the day, towards this endpoint here, kind of taking a jab at conservatives and Republicans. But I think I don't want to say like if he was to talk to conservatives or Republicans, because he absolutely does. He talks to Jordan Peterson, he talks to Ben Shapiro, he talks to Dave Rubin, Charlie Kirk, all these people. And kudos to him for doing that. But I think that's a little bit of a jab there. But I don't want that to take away from his prior statements that he was making about what do we need to do as a nation for those that are here with malicious ideology, that are chanting things in our universities, basically asking for the extermination of Jews, whether they will say so or not, because they're not going to openly admit that, because there's at least some sort of morality left in our culture where people will be like, whoa, that's a little bit much. But we're not too far off here from people just saying, I want Jews eradicated and gone. I don't believe that one bit. I don't want that of any people other than those that are actually evil, like Nazis, things like that, that want to do actual harm, Hamas, terrorist organizations, to Americans or other people that are just trying to live their lives out like the rest of us. But I wanted to bring that to you, do something a little bit different here on this Monday episode, and present you to something that, again, I meditate on these things a lot. I buy books on these things a lot of times, and to kind of go into the geriatric part of it, we got Trump coming up. I like Trump. Don't get me wrong. I like Trump, but I do think here that this election needs to be the last for the older generation to reign. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have somebody old, but if you look at like a Ramaswamy, just the way he talks, his ideology sometimes doesn't grab a hold, I think, with a lot of Republicans right now, because I don't think a lot of people just in general have woken up to what Eric Weinstein's talking about here. Whereas me, again, I'm reading, I'm listening to a lot of these podcasts. I'm not saying you guys don't, but there is a lot of truth to what he is saying, and there's a lot of truth with what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying. And if Ron wasn't as great as a governor as he is, I would say that Vivek is my second guy. And I would go as far to even say that right now. I want Trump to win, but I want Vivek as a VP, because I think we need him to run again after Trump, or he needs to run again just to expose what's going on at high levels of government, these elites, these woke libs, the destruction of certain corporations and the ideologies that they're pushing down upon the rest of us. This stuff needs to be utilized to push also a narrative that's pro-America, make America great again, like you're seeing Trump doing, and bringing us back to the state of which we were before, and our own liberties and freedoms aren't being utilized as a weapon against us, from whether it's our own domestic government or governments foreign and abroad, like we're seeing from Hamas and others. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ball Brad Show. I hope you made it all the way through, folks. Thank you for always supporting me. Again, we got a shop, get some merch. This is the 1776 American Patriot shirt, the one with the Minuteman on the back holding the pistol, baby. But hit that like and subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a comment down below on what you think about anything Eric Weinstein said. Again, he's somebody of the left. I think we should push and have dialogue with those on the other side of the aisle. And folks, I'll see you later here on the Ball Brad Show.